Welcome back to the High-End Society. We're back as well, here in the Analog Valley in Bergisch Gladbach. And today, we're going to take a look at what the company Thorens has to offer and its journey into the modern era after a tradition of over 100 years. But Gunter Kürten is about to tell me what's behind it all. Come on with me. Hello, Gunter.
Hello, Jürgen. Welcome to Thorens.
Thank you very much for your invitation.
My pleasure.
And I see there are new models here as well.
Yes, the new 404, the first prototypes are here.
Great. But you surely have more to show, right?
Plenty, over in the listening room. Let's head over there.
Gladly. Yes, Gunther, you have a truly beautiful listening room here. But tell me, you have been actively on the market with Thorens for many, many decades now?
Yes, for 143 years already. Incredible. 2018 was actually the significant restart of Thorens. In 2017, I had the very first initial talks with the previous owner, who unfortunately didn't have a suitable successor. And he approached me in my role as then ELAG Managing Director to ask whether ELAG might be interested in taking over Thorens. And for me, it was immediately clear, Gunther, this is your chance. So even as the managing director at ELAG, I was still an employee, but I had always truly wanted to take the significant leap into self-employment. And so I eagerly seized the opportunity and told Heinz Rohrer at that time, sell this company to me. And his response was basically just in Swiss German, well, Gunther, can you really do it? And that's how the discussions then started.
But it must be an absolutely overwhelming, truly remarkable feeling to be able to lead such a traditional brand now. When we look at the product range, what has remained and what is completely new?
If I look back on it, we've certainly had a few challenging years behind us where the product range didn't really fit our vision. And I have to admit, the chosen suppliers didn't suit our specific needs either. We absolutely had to start completely over from scratch. And it was very clear to me that if you truly want to be successful with Thorens, you have to reconnect, at least in part, with the fundamental and original core values that made Thorens truly great back then. So I first took a careful look at the entire product range and said, okay, if we're going to do something truly new, then it should be products that genuinely reflect the real DNA of Thorens. And back then that meant, of course, sub-chassis turntables with belt drive, more of a classic design and nothing too fancy. And then we sat down together, yes, with Helmut Thiele, and carefully considered which products we truly wanted to bring to the market and precisely what they should look like.
When you talk to the dedicated Thorens fan base, which is enormous, you will definitely get the amount of input and a whole lot of requests coming your way. How do you handle that? How can you make that happen?
You can't fulfill every wish. Some things are, let me give you an example. There are always a few people who approach us and say they'd like a BC model. Back then, the Thorens BC models were turntables without tone arms. That market is so small that you have to say, it's just not worth it. I myself am actually quite active in a few online forums. For example, I'll specifically mention the renowned Analog Forum, where a lot of dedicated specialists truly hang out, and you really do get valuable suggestions there. And of course, the basic idea for a product, we developed that here ourselves. But some little things, suggestions for improvement, actually come from that community. And we take a look at those. Yeah, actually, that's a good idea. Let's put that into practice. We've already received a lot of good suggestions.
You're already bringing up the topic of development. How should I picture that? How does a new Thorens come into being?
So at some point, I think, okay, the first one was the 1600 series based on the TD160. Then came the 1500 based on the TD150. These are things where you say that's very logical because there were already predecessors to some extent. So let's build on that. It gets interesting when you venture into new territory. The best example is the direct drive turntables, which we also have in our lineup and which are running very successfully. And that also has to do with, okay, let's carefully analyze the market, which specific price ranges truly work, which models are already well established and widely recognized in the market. And then we try to draw our conclusions from that and develop a product at the optimal right price point with the appropriate features. And here, for example, is the TD403DD, where some people said, but Thorens isn't known for direct drive. But that's not true, because there actually was once a patent from Thorens for a direct drive gramophone. So in that particular respect, these direct drives were already present within the company. And I even have over in our main office a direct drive from 1952 that wasn't even officially called TD yet and was originally equipped with an autophon tone arm. Those are precisely the kinds of fascinating things I keep coming back to. And we also consistently try to break entirely new ground with them.
How big is the team here at Thorens now?
We're actually not big at all. So right now there are 6 of us here in the office. Then I have a lot of things outsourced, like Helmut Thiele, Walter Fuchs, just to name 2 developers. We also have others. Then we have an external service partner, Plattenspieler Reparatur.de, with Arno Schroeder, who mainly takes care of the old devices. We can't do all of that here ourselves. And of course, there are logistics partners, production partners, and in the end, that adds up to a large team. But the people who are actually on the payroll here, the core team, are 6 people with whom we manage all this.
That's actually a very effective structure. So you're really looking at a comprehensive network of various collaborators and dedicated development colleagues. But how should I imagine the production process? Where is it done?
We have a dedicated production partner for the turntables located in Taiwan. You have to imagine it like this. When I took over Thorens, there was no longer a Thorens factory. Those glory days in Lahr, where the Lahr device factory was, were long gone. The buildings no longer exist, and we basically had to start from scratch. And it was important to me to find a production partner who can deliver the quality. That's the top priority. Of course, also someone who can offer a price where in the end, we can say the product fits into the market. Because I'm not the kind of person who says, okay, we only start at 5,000 euros or higher. We start at 500 euros and go all the way up. And this choice of production partner was extremely important. To be honest, it was also a stroke of luck for us because the collaboration between development and production is absolutely crucial. And here we develop the devices, we build the prototypes, we create all the construction drawings, and then at a certain point we hand everything over to the production partner. And then it starts all over again with us having many meetings with them. I also travel to Taiwan very often. I oversee the process, and from that, the first prototype is created on their side, which already looks cosmetically appealing and matches the final production model. Then there are further approval procedures before production can really get underway. And I can say that the range we have built up over the past 8 years, or almost 8 years now, that was developed completely from scratch. Every turntable currently in our lineup was introduced in the past few years. And you can only do that if you have a production partner who is on board with you. And it's truly a pleasure to work with them.
I think a significant portion of that truly comes from your unique personal experience and extensive professional background. You have worked for subsidiaries of both prominent Asian and influential German companies. This really shapes your entire way of working with an international network. Of course, that also enables the scaling of the entire business model.
Yeah.
You just mentioned price ranges. Here we have the new reference on display, a very elaborate and of course ambitious product. But you also just mentioned the 500 euro price range. Where is Thorens positioning itself?
To some extent, of course, we're trying to appeal to as broad an audience as possible. The reference. That's of course the tip of the iceberg, and it's not a product we have to rely on for our livelihood. That's not even possible. Rather, it's a technology showcase. And for our 140th anniversary, we thought, let's show what we're capable of. Absolutely. And the goal was to build the best Thorens turntable that Thorens can build. And I believe we've truly reached the world-class level here because there are some very special technologies inside as well. By the way, this is the only Thorens turntable currently manufactured in Germany. At our partners Seismion, who have also incorporated this decoupling technology. And once again, it's all about networking. We don't have a production facility here that I can show you where we assemble everything. Instead, this all happens within the network.
How exactly does quality control truly work within this intricate network? I can certainly imagine that with such a highly specialized division of labor, someone absolutely must keep a comprehensive overview to ensure that the established standards you've developed are actually being consistently maintained. So how precisely does that all truly work?
Of course, part of it also comes down to the trust you have in the people at the factory. That's absolutely clear. You can't stand next to every single screw. However, you have to know that the Taiwanese really have very high quality standards. They are world market leaders in microchip production. They're also outstanding when it comes to precision mechanical parts. So if you consider a completely different industry, for example, the bicycle manufacturing industry, when it comes to frames, gears, and everything related to precision mechanics, Taiwan currently holds a very significant share of the global market. And of course, for us, that also means being on site as much as absolutely possible. So whenever we have new product launches, there's definitely someone there. Usually that's me then. Helmut Thiele is also involved. Most recently, I was in Taiwan with Benjamin on the topic of Coturn. So we're currently on site. I'm also on the line for a full week, carefully monitoring and actively getting involved. That's really important, especially because the colleagues on the line also learn directly from someone. So it's not about monitoring, but about guiding people on how things are supposed to work. How do I set up a subchassis, for example? What are the finer points when it comes to tone arms, etc.? And that's best done when you're on site. And we do that very regularly.
You're already touching upon a very important point, the overall experience, but of course also the dedicated service for all Thorens customers here on site. What exactly does that look like in practice? What kind of service can a Thorens customer from Germany or Europe expect from you here?
Full service. We notice, unfortunately, that there is a significant bit of a shift occurring in the retail sector, with fewer and fewer people truly knowing about turntables and their rich history. For example, which cartridge matches which turntable, and how to make the fine adjustments on the device. And of course, we also have service cases where something breaks. We handle all of that here in Bergisch Gladbach as long as it concerns current devices. We have a workshop here where, in fact, most of the time I'm the one who repairs the devices. People are often surprised, but I'm deeply involved in the subject, so for me it's usually done pretty quickly. At some point the time will come when we'll need someone else. We're growing and that's completely normal. But at the moment I almost exclusively take care of the service myself. But what's important is that we have an incredible number of customers out there who own old Thorens devices. There were so many great devices from Thorens, like the TD160, TD146, TD126, and they just keep running and running and running. And eventually, after 40 years, maybe they finally give up the ghost. And that's where we have a service that handles this exclusively for us. They're based in southern Germany, and that's where we refer customers when it comes to those old treasures. And there's still a huge stock of spare parts for the old devices there as well. So in that sense, new products are here in Bergisch Gladbach and old products are in Stephanskirchen in southern Germany.
Now you're already talking about the past of Thorens. In a side note, you just mentioned another brand name, and that's where I'd like to move on to the topic of the future. Coturn. What connects Thorens with Coturn and how did that come about?
Coturn, a brief explanation. Coturn stands for compact turntable, so a mobile, small record player. And as turntable manufacturers, we all have to give this some thought. Who are actually our customers of the future? At the moment, of course, it's still strongly influenced by the boomer generation. Many who are perhaps now retiring have more time and are rediscovering the hi-fi or vinyl hobby. And then there's this new, much younger generation that has suddenly discovered vinyl for themselves and truly thinks it's incredibly cool. And there's a significant overlap between the initial launch of Spotify in 2008 and the remarkable vinyl boom we are experiencing right now. If I type vinyl boom into Google, it says it started in 2008. I think it started earlier, but that's when the real momentum began. In the last 10 years, vinyl sales in Germany have tripled. And that's also actually being very strongly driven by the younger generation. They might really be coming more from the DJ scene, quite clearly. And you have to definitely consider, can I, with my traditional products, and Thorens is more of a product that appeals to older people, clearly. How do I reach young people? Young people usually listen to music with headphones, with Bluetooth speakers, and they don't really have big, elaborate stereo systems at home anymore, and that's perfectly fine. But the Coturn turntable truly manages to reach a new, younger target group there, for whom a conventional turntable would be quite boring. And a Coturn is a truly stylish, very cool product. Everyone genuinely wants to have one. And I more or less became aware of the Coturn through an interesting article in a magazine, and then I promptly bought one for myself. And Benjamin Gross-Johann, who founded Coturn, then called me and asked, "So why do you want to buy my turntable?" Because he saw that I had ordered it through Thorens. I told him I want it because I think it's cool, because I find the concept convincing and great. He thought I wanted to copy it, but that wasn't the case. But that's how we got into conversation. And at some point, Benjamin said, "Can I come visit you guys?" And then you could clearly tell that Coturn was still in its very early infancy. So it was a new startup company that had successfully collected money through crowdfunding. And it was a one-man show. And the product was a success right from the start, sold only through social media, through Instagram and the like, because there was no established dealer network yet. And then I suggested to Benjamin, "Come on, let's do this together. We'll found a new company under the Thorens umbrella, the Coturn by Thorens GmbH, and make it its very own distinct thing, a young, cool, and appealing brand that attracts different customers than the traditional Thorens clientele."
That actually brings me to the last question. Thorens customers typically buy from qualified specialist retailers. Where does the Coturn customer buy?
Yes, it will be a combination. Of course, up to now, the product has currently been sold only exclusively through social media channels. And now, of course, we have worldwide distribution channels. We sell to over 50 countries around the world. And we will certainly also supply some, though definitely not all, of our valued distributors located around the entire world with it. But there will also be new customers, meaning those coming from a different direction. That could be from the lifestyle sector, but it could also be from the musical instrument trade. So customers you wouldn't necessarily expect to be hi-fi customers. In that sense, it's not to be seen under the hi-fi category, but rather under the lifestyle category.
Yes, we've talked quite a lot about both Thorens and Coturn, but Helmut Thiele is truly the mastermind behind this remarkable new reference as well. I think we should take a closer look at that too. What do you think?
Let's go to Duisburg to see Helmut Thiele.
Who actually is Helmut Thiele? Tell me about him.
Helmut Thiele is someone who, as a little boy, tinkered and did a lot of things. And then at some point he started studying mechanical engineering until he realized that he was genuinely very interested in technology, but it still was not quite 100% exactly what he truly wanted. And then I met an industrial design student, and from him, I had him show me and explain in detail how a design degree works. And then, after half of my mechanical engineering studies, I made a detour. And in the next semester, I was an industrial design student studying with a lot of fun and enthusiasm and working on all sorts of different projects. And my thesis as an industrial design student in 1978 was a record player and a tone arm.
So now we're talking about music. Wonderful.
Yes.
How did the two of you end up working together?
In a way, I kind of inherited Helmut, so to speak. He had already worked for Thorens before. And when I officially took over Thorens in the year 2018, that's when we really got to know each other. And I thought, oh man, he's the right person to help me realize my ideas for the future of Thorens. And that was a process we went through together.
Yes, we learned in a relatively short period of time how to really work with each other, and how I can prepare and present my design drafts in such a way that I can discuss with Gunter whether we should do it this way or that way or another way. I mainly do this on my laptop, on the computer, using three-dimensional CAD software so that you can look at everything I've come up with from all sides on the monitor, as if it were already built.
And now we see two prototype models here. This was one of your very first projects, right at the beginning, right?
Yes, the 1600 series was the first project, basically inspired by the DNA of the earlier Thorens models, in this case the TD160. And we spent a lot of time working closely together on it. That led to the creation of our first project. That's the 1600 series.
How exactly should I imagine such a development process between the two of you? Between both of you? You have your own design studio here, so you're not sitting in the office with Gunter in Bergisch Gladbach. How does this work in practice?
Well, I have my office right here, and my listening room is just next door, which I always need at the end of the day. I have a 3D CAD program in which I design everything in 3D down to the very last millimeter, constructed with absolute precision. And yes, so once Gunter and I have the design to the point where we know this is how it should look, then I build a prototype of the chassis, the turntable, as well as all the individual parts of the tone arm. And then once it's all carefully assembled, we listen to music with it, and then we check and listen to see if everything works properly and sounds just the way we originally imagined.
Yes, after the development has taken place here between you and Germany, at some point it moves into production. How does it continue from there with the prototypes and the designs?
Well, that's very important to us, developed in Germany. And we have 100% control over the devices, and not just off the shelf. And we take from the modular system and then build ourselves a turntable. When Helmut has finished developing the product, we basically hand it over to the factory with all the drawings, with prototypes like the ones you can see behind me right now. And then the process begins where the factory looks at how they can produce the product efficiently. Then there are sometimes requests for changes to small details, as well as suggestions and recommendations on how things can be improved or optimized for mass production. And then comes the time when we fly to Taiwan, visit the factory in person, and have important development meetings with the team on site. Usually we go to Taiwan a second time as well, which is typically when the mass production of such a product actually begins. So the communication is very, very intensive and frequent. Personally, I have my weekly fixed meeting with our colleagues in Taiwan, especially when things are heating up and getting busy for new products.
And you surely also carry out quality control here on site as well, right?
Yes, when the products arrive, of course we do spot checks. We also check the devices themselves. But usually we already received the so-called pre-production samples beforehand, and that's when the final approval process takes place. As I said, for new products, we are also present on site when the series production officially starts to carefully check if everything is just as we envisioned it.
Gunter, besides the models that are produced and manufactured in Taiwan, you also have a flagship model, the so-called new reference, which carefully follows in the footsteps of the venerable and highly respected reference. That was developed by the two of you as well, right?
Yes, 3 years ago we celebrated our 140th anniversary. And beforehand I thought to myself, man, we really have to do something special and memorable for the 140th anniversary. So I approached Helmut and said, hey, shouldn't we make a new reference? And your answer? What kind of question is that? That's how it came about.
So how did it get started? Who, so to speak, formulated the Big Bang?
Well, the old reference already sets certain important parameters, basically. The Thorens genes are present, and what was completely new is the integrated active damping system, where Gunter found the company Seismion.
Exactly. It was important to me that we also build the best turntable we possibly can. And I came across a technology that is actually more commonly used in medical technology applications. The colleagues at Seismion built them, platforms that are, among other things, for electron scanning microscopes. You can imagine an electron scanning microscope must not be exposed to vibrations. And we snagged that technology for ourselves to Helmut to carefully integrate the innovative technology into a turntable.
So I got the measurements from Seismion, how much space they needed in each corner of the new reference model where the springs used to be, how much space they needed to install their technology there, and what the technology actually looked like. I really didn't know that until almost the very end. It really was a black box. So I designed an entire reference, and in the corners there were black volumes for me, shaped in such a way that their dimensions were fully sufficient for Seismion's technology. Then they developed the reference within this volume. I then created design drafts, which we looked at together on my CRD computer and discussed whether we liked the idea here, there, and over there, or if we might want to incorporate a different idea. And once the final design was decided, we had all the data available that was needed to build the first prototype.
Yes, last question for both of you. Of course, a turntable also needs a tone arm. I'm thinking of the TP160. That's basically a co-production between you two as well, right?
Yes, I have the TP92, which Helmut also designed, and in a way I inherited it from him. And then I said, Helmut, let's take it up a notch, let's push the boundaries a little further. And you already had an idea for a completely new type of sliding bearing tone arm, which was really exciting. And I remember, Helmut, before you got started, you were in Mallorca and sent me a drawing. I still have a photo of it, and you said, this is how I could imagine such a tone arm. And then I said, yeah, sure, great, go for it. And then you started and designed it?
Yes, it wasn't simply that I had an idea, but rather I had already spent some time thinking about the topic beforehand and had even constructed some prototype parts, because I genuinely believed that you could optimize a knife edge bearing, to put it mildly. And then, because I already knew that the principle I had come up with for an optimized knife edge bearing, I then incorporated it into the design of the old Thorens tone arm. It had to fit. With this idea in mind, I was on vacation at some point, got bored and found a piece of paper and a pen, and I made a few basic sketches and wrote down the story. And once we agreed, I started to design this tone arm with the knife edge bearing, and I also had the entire thing modeled in 3D on the computer here. And here as well, using my own resources and my CNC milling machine, I manufactured all the individual parts and built the prototype and found that it worked excellently.
It worked very well. Yes, I clearly remember that I was in Taiwan when we began the series production of the tone arm, and we were really always in close contact with each other. There were certainly one or two notable challenges at the very beginning, because assembling the arm is definitely not that easy. And by now, this series has become one of our best-selling models. With this new arm, things really picked up again.
Yes, thank you very much for these deep insights into your development and especially into your production process, and of course also into the office in Bergisch Gladbach.
Thank you. My pleasure.
So, dear friends, that was our visit to the well-known company Thorens and also to Helmut Thiele. I think we got a lot of truly fascinating and valuable insights into how this top networked company operates and how these very great turntables are made. I hope you enjoyed it, and I look forward to seeing you again very soon. Until then, bye.